Parker's estate agents, and today I want to talk to you about our forecast for the year ahead. What will the market look like in 2024? And really a quick recap on what's happened in 2023. So to kick off, 2023, what a year. I read something recently that described it as an interest rate apocalypse, which sounds quite strongly worded, but really that has been the key driver for the property market globally, nationally, and especially here in West Oxfordshire. But fortunately, we're now in a position where interest rates are hopefully at their peak. Certainly, that's what the general consensus seems to be. And they're starting to settle down, which is lifting sentiment. And we're expecting to see somewhat of an upturn in 2024, certainly based on sort of activity levels we experienced towards the end of 2023. We had a massive shock in terms of interest rate changes. They went through the roof, a succession of very rapid increases, and that really affected affordability. But that affordability is starting to improve, and essentially that is what is going to drive the market as we move into 2024. The graph here just shows really the market outlook and how people expect it to see, but we'll come back to this in more detail in a few minutes. So looking ahead, these are the average metrics from a number of different sources, but essentially we expect to see the economy perform pretty much the same as it did in 2023, with inflation coming right down. It peaked in double figures, and we're now looking at a forecast of about 2.7% by the end of 2024. Wage growth will also slow. We saw some quite high growth in wages across 2023. That is expected to fall back, and that's important because that obviously drives affordability. But look at that, 6.5% average wage growth in 2023. That was improving buyer affordability throughout the year. Bank rate coming down, again, that improves affordability because that influences the swap rate, which influences the mortgage rates that those people buying with mortgages will be paying. And house prices, the general consensus is 2.2% minus across the year, but I'm going to come to that later, specifically because I'm talking about West Oxfordshire, and this is a UK average. So I've already mentioned the affordability word. This is really important. Effectively, as we compare affordability levels across time, then if a market needs to slow down, that means that affordability is overstretched, and when a recovery can take place, that's because affordability is improving. And it's a combination of the interest rates and house prices that will drive affordability, and we'll see hopefully in 2024 a recovery in buyer confidence. We've seen lower 5-year swap rates, which are those interest rates that affect mortgage borrowing at the end of 2023. And so, this will filter through and is already filtering through to mortgage rates, particularly as lenders are keen to lend money because they've seen such low figures in 2023. And, if we look at the forecast in earnings growth for 2024, coupled with the reduced lending rates, then we're going to see improved affordability throughout the year, and that will drive the recovery in the property market. So let's have a look first of all at home buyer demand in Oxfordshire. So this graph comes from Rightmove and shows us the level of people searching to buy a property in Oxfordshire compared to the same time last year. And you'll see that towards the tail end of 2023, that has trended up quite strongly and is north of an increase of 20%. So that home buyer demand, those green shoots of recovery, is already happening here in Oxfordshire. And this is not covering the whole of Oxfordshire, this graph, not specifically West Oxfordshire, but I don't have the fidelity of data for that. Certainly, what we're experiencing in our Witney and Ensham branches is an uptick in buyer activity. And December, has been far busier than we'd anticipated it would be at the start of the year, or even, as we were looking in September, October time, we thought December would be dead. Actually, we've been exceptionally busy, and I'll come back to that in a moment. So what are the key drivers that are going to be facing us in 2024 as far as the market goes? First of all, it's important to mention that Boxing Day bounce. Boxing Day is one of the busiest days that the portals see people searching to buy properties. And last year, so 2023 Boxing Day, was a record with 173% uptick in buyer activity compared to 2019. And, we're already seeing significant interest from sellers. As of the midpoint of December, we've already got 8 properties that we will be making live on Boxing Day. And I think that we won't be alone in that, and there will be an increase in properties coming to the market. So effectively, properties to buy from a buyer perspective, which will also drive market activity. I think it's also worth noting, Rightmove pointed out that 2 of their 20th busiest days they've ever had on record for future sellers contacting estate agents for valuations were both in January 2023. So again, I think we can expect to see an increase in activity in January, not least because Easter comes very early in 2024. And that's crucial because families try and move home during school holidays, of which Easter is one of the principal ones. And if you bear in mind that it takes some 3 or 4 months from accepting an offer to physically moving, then you can see that an early burst of activity in January to hit those timescales for an Easter move are going to be absolutely critical. It's also important to note that building is going to hit a record low this year, despite the demand. We've got constraints on material, on labour costs, on funding costs, and they're going to dampen supply. It's really interesting that over the last 12 months, less than 1% of all properties sold in West Oxfordshire were new builds. And you can see that the new builders are scaling back. And so that is only going to decrease at a time when West Oxfordshire population is growing and we're seeing people want to move to the area. So, really important that actually new builds form a very insignificant part of the overall property picture for West Oxfordshire. I think also we might see some investors coming back to the fore. Rents are at record highs, mortgage rates are coming down. And so actually, and especially as we saw some softening of property prices, then, investors returning for buy-to-let properties will prop up some of the market in the sort of 2-bed type sector. Some key dates to be aware of. I've already mentioned that Easter is early. The first meeting of the MPC, the committee that sets interest rates, is on the 1st of February. We will have a budget in March. We've not got a date yet, but that's going to be absolutely key. And of course, date TBC, but it's very likely we're going to see a general election. And that is going to be a driver for the housing market. General elections tend to generate uncertainty in the housing market. We'll see what happens and when it is. It's got to be by January 2025. But, there are increasing sort of noises around perhaps a May election, and that will impact a whole swathe of things, not least the legislation that's coming through, which is likely to impact on our local housing market. We've got the Renters Reform Bill, the Leasehold and Freehold Bill, and various other bits and pieces looking at short-term rents, etc., which will all have an impact on our housing market. So let's have a little bit of a focus on West Oxfordshire, shall we? 68.6% of people in West Oxfordshire own their own home, and just under 18%, so 17.9%, live in rented accommodation. So that's sort of mix of people that we have living in West Oxfordshire. Just over 11%, 11.1% are flats. The remainder, or 88.9%, are housing. That is a low proportion of flats compared to the average in the southeast of England. Interestingly, in the last 5 years, there have been 4,398 new homes built across West Oxfordshire, which averages 880 a year. And yet the population of West Oxfordshire has grown significantly. And that shows that, again, supply and demand will, I think, have a significant impact on our local housing market as demand outstrips supply. What is critical, though, over the last 12 months, West Oxfordshire has seen a decrease in transactions, so the physical buying and selling of properties, by 35.4%. That is higher than the southeast average. That is higher than the local average. And again, I think there is pent-up demand in West Oxfordshire, which again, I think is going to support the local housing market, because if those people need to move, they're not going to put that off forever. And there is a bow wave of built-up activity, pent-up demand there, which will lead to buyer activity. In terms of average prices, over the last 12 months, the average price of a flat in West Oxfordshire has been just under £207,000. A terraced house, just over £337,000. A detached home has averaged £604,496. Semi £381,600, and new builds, the average price of a new build has been just over £521,000. So quite a lot going on, but not as much activity as we thought. The other crucial factor for West Oxfordshire is that we have a higher proportion of cash buyers. It's just over a third. And of course, we need to bear in mind that for cash buyers, interest rates are immaterial, other than the fact, of course, if they keep it in the bank, they'll be getting a decent return on that compared to what they might have seen 12, 24 months ago. So if you're going to sell a home in 2024, what are those top tips that are going to make a significant difference? How are you going to ensure that your property is going to be the one that achieves the very best outcome and the very best for you and anyone else you'll be moving with? Rightmove have done a load of research over this, but properties that are priced correctly generate 40% more interest, and that the most interest is in the first 3 weeks of marketing. So if you're going to sell your property, you've got to get the pricing right, and it needs to really get that maximum impact in those first 3 weeks. They're absolutely critical, because no matter what you do after those first 3 weeks, you're fighting a losing battle in that, yes, these changes are important, but it's not going to have as much impact as it would in those first 3 weeks. So that lead image is absolutely critical. It's got to jump out the page and make your property look fantastic. Research has shown that properties with films or virtual tours are generating an additional 8% interest, but it's not just the increased interest that's important, it's that ability to be able to see the property in more detail, to ensure that any viewings are really focused, because people who have the ability to see a detailed virtual tour, can either discount or review a property as much as they need to. And any viewings, any physical viewings, are much more important, because effectively they've already seen the property. Interestingly, a detailed floor plan, not just any old floor plan, but one with decent measurements, increases the level of interest by 12%. But you've only got 2 seconds to grab the attention of a potential buyer. And so the key elements have to be there front and center right from the outset. So to improve this, certainly on Rightmove, you can use things like premium listings and featured properties. They make the property stand out. They show a case of property to a wider audience and allow you to add additional images in that initial search criteria. But as I've said at the start, it's so important to price correctly versus testing the market, because if you come in at too high a price in this market, then swathes of potential buyers will discount your property, and you're missing out on that level of interest in those crucial first 3 weeks. If your property is worth, £400,000, if we get the right level of interest by marketing the property correctly at £400,000, or even taking a slightly more aggressive pricing strategy and going for offers over £390,000, you're going to maximise the number of potential buyers, and it's an agent's job to get you the right outcome. And if you've got a choice then between a cash buyer at £380,000, somebody with a small chain at £390,000, or a long chain at £400,000, then depending on your circumstances, you can then choose who the right buyer is for you when the agent's gone away and checked all the details of the offer in the chain, because everyone's circumstances are different. Buyers want the full facts. They need to understand how the property is heated, what the internet speeds are going to be like, what the parking situation is. All of that sort of stuff is critical. And so look at the other marketing on the portals, Rightmove, on the market, whatever, see how much information there is, and see which agents are giving their buyers the most choice and information to make an informed decision, because that's absolutely critical. And if they're not using premium, professional photography, then that is going to be an immediate turn off. But remember, if you're looking to buy somewhere, only 2% on average of properties are ever on the market at once. So if you speak to a proactive agent, and we can help you on that, actually we can look at the other 98% of properties, some of which will be coming to the market statistically, and see if we can find your dream home through some off-market talking to people who have properties that are exactly what you might be looking for. There are things that can be done to help you find the right property even if the one you're looking for isn't necessarily on the market at the time that you're looking. If we look at the performance of agents in West Oxfordshire, so this was taken from Get Agent on the 6th of December 2023, so it's pretty contemporary. And you'll see that we're taking on average 8 weeks to agree a sale on a property. I mean, that's a fairly unimportant statistic because some will sell very quickly and some will take a very long time to sell. But I think far more importantly, we're achieving 99.1% of the original asking price, which is the highest of any agent. And that's because we're marketing with the best possible marketing. We are valuing properties accurately, and we're negotiating the very best outcome for our clients. So on average, we're up negotiating over £11,000 from that initial offer to the agreed offer, so that we're working really hard for our fee to make sure that our clients get the very best outcome. But what isn't shown on this, which perhaps more important, everyone knows that the scourge of the property market is when a property sale or purchase falls through. That's enormously stressful. On average, it's costing up to £3,000, but that doesn't take into account the amount of stress, any other associated elements of that. Our fall through rate is half of the national average, because nearly 1 in 3 sales will fall through. Ours is less than half of that, and would be, you can't put a value on that. It's really important. So our fall through ratio is 15.63%, against the national average of 33.94%. So 1 in 3 will fall through nationally. Right, crystal ball time. What's going to be going on in 2024? And this is where I put my neck on the line and make some predictions, but also I'll share with you some of the information about the wider market. So Savills has forecast that annual falls will be around 4% by the end of the year, which is a 7% drop from the peak of autumn 2022 until the end of 2024. So, that is a significant drop. Supla expects the drop to be no more than 2%. Lloyds Bank thinks that the prices will slide and not start to recover until 2025. They're talking about a contraction of 2.4%. Nationwide expects house prices to be £45,000 higher on average by 2028. And that's in common with a lot of other forecasts that I've just sort of name dropped. They're all talking about perhaps a small contraction in 2024, but prices coming back reasonably strongly after that. The other key trend is that the time taken to agree a sale has increased from 45 days to 66 days now, and that trend is increasing. And so sellers must be competitive on price to attract those people through the door, to attract the offers, something I've already spoken about. And the level of price reductions as well. We've seen significant numbers of price reductions this year. 39% of properties have seen a price reduction in 2023, and that's up significantly from last year and previous years as well. In 2019, it was 34%. And so new sellers, people coming to the market now, will need to compete with those people who are on the market or have been on the market for some time and perhaps have already seen a price reduction. We've got to be competitive on price and then negotiate upwards from there if the market supports that. It's an agent's job to get the very best price for your property, and that's what we're very good at. But in order to do that, we have to have those offers to work with. The other key point are transaction volumes. We're expecting nationally transaction volumes to be around 1 million nationally in 2024. So that's slightly higher than this year. And you'll remember I mentioned earlier that transaction volumes in West Oxfordshire were down by I think about 35%. So, a significant drop. That will come back a little bit in 2024 and hopefully rising to about 1.16 million in 2025. The average norm is about 1.2 million pre-pandemic. So that gives you an idea of the sort of level of transaction volumes we're talking about. But I think, supporting this are affordability levels. We've spoken about swap rates and interest rates coming down, and mortgage rates have fallen steadily since July. And the average 2-year fix is now about 5.5%, and the average 5-year fix is around 5.11%. And hopefully by Easter, those figures, you know, for a 5-year fix, will start with a 4. I mean, it'll be high 4s, but we're hoping that you know, we'll see that, and that again will drive affordability and market reactions. So I think we're going to see, for the reasons I've mentioned throughout this presentation, actually a leveling off now of prices in West Oxfordshire. I think, putting my neck on the line, we've already seen the price falls that we're expecting. And the reason I say that is because we're not building new, the population is growing, there is pent-up demand, and we're seeing affordability improve. West Oxfordshire remains a really lovely place to live and work. We've got pretty much full employment. And so I think that, you know, we've seen the end of significant price drops in West Oxfordshire, and 2024 I expect house prices to be pretty much where they start the year. So report back and see how we did on that, but that's the view from Parker's on where West Oxfordshire house prices are likely to be in 2024. If you've got any questions or comments, I'd love to hear them. Otherwise, thank you for your time. I hope you've got something out of this forecast for 2024.